Thank you very much for joining this, what I feel is going to be a really incredible session with Nilima, Bhat. We are going to be focusing today on a
What I
topic
feel
that
is going
is
to be a really
very
incredible session.
Yes, I was saying that I feel that this is gonna be an incredible session where we are gonna be focusing on Shakti leadership. I was with Nilima a few weeks ago, and a few of you here in Auroville in India. An incredible 10-day retreat. 9 days? We went through 9 numbers, but it was 10 days in total. And we explore Shakti, and we explore Shakti leadership, and we explore the power of numbers. And the setting was huge, so impactful, because it was Auroville during a time that is really sacred for Auroville, because it's both the mother and the download of the supramental, and at the same time is the birthday of the city. So it's so much going on during that week. And Nilima was leading this retreat, Shakti Kumbh, and maybe Nilima, you can explain a bit to us what that means. But it was so powerful and the connection was so deep that we decided to offer this webinar to everybody who wants to know more about Shakti leadership, what it means, why it's so powerful. My feeling is that this is the future of leadership. This is really the present and the future. We are moving into new paradigms for human progress. I call them, one of them is happitalism, is basically the focus on being happier, not basically accumulation of wealth. And when we think about how we get there, I think that we agree, and this will be part of the webinar today, about this system that is based on synarchy. And synarchy is the harmony and balance of systems working together. So with that in mind, what Nilima has been working on as a thought leader in the space of leadership is remarkable. So just a short introduction around about Nilima, and then we are gonna give her the voice for the next 45 minutes. Is that she's now a distinguished professor in gender and conscious leadership for the Business School and the School of Humanities and Education at Tec de Monterrey. And of course, she's a visionary in the fields of personal mastery, leadership, gender equality, and well-being. Her extensive and pioneering body of work is encompassed in her two books, Shakti Leadership, Embracing Feminine and Masculine Power in Business, and My Cancer is Me, The Journey from Illness to Wholeness. So with that, thank you so much, Nilima, for being with us, and let's go deeper into Shakti Leadership.
Thank you, Louis. It's just such a delight to hear you again, to see you again, and to see many of our wonderful participants of the Shakti Kumbh that just concluded last month in Auroville, from the Mother Sri Aurobindo's birthday on the 21st of February to the Auroville's birthday on the 28th, and then the supramental anniversary of the 29th, which happens once in 4 years. And the Shakti Kumbh is something I initiated to help revive and archive the Indic knowledge system of Shakti, because this is one of India's great gifts to the world, and we need to keep it alive. We need to preserve it. We need to continue to evolve it. There's nothing but Shakti according to this knowledge system. Everything is the power that animates the universe and that animates us. So we take care of our Shakti, and Shakti takes care of the rest. So that was the reason for setting up Shakti Kumbh. Something's come up. Confirm your speaking language. No, I'm speaking English, actually. I just cancel it. Okay. It's so lovely to see much loved faces. And I'm going to go into a presentation. It's something that really encapsulates the entire book, Shakti Leadership. So if you just listen to this 30-minute, 40-minute keynote, you have an introduction to the entire model. And if you're inspired by this, then of course, there are ways to go deeper into Shakti Leadership. So let me begin. I like to say that the only win is a win-win. And this is my role currently. I'm with Tecnológico de Monterrey as part of their Faculty of Excellence program. I travel the world, but I'm based out of Guadalajara in Mexico right now. Another title for today's session is Why Lead with Half Your Power? And I find this title intrigues people every time because the question is like, really? There's more power to go around and I don't know about it? You know, how do I find it and how do I lead with my full power? So the context, of course, we have a world in crisis. They say there is a third world war between humanity and the planet. It's the Anthropocene age. We're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction of species. And 4 more Earths are needed for the developing world to catch up with the developed world. That's how overconsumed the world is and its resources are by the developed world, the global north. And 2030 is a time horizon, which is why we have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And if we don't meet some of them, we may actually cross some planetary boundaries and horizons to a point of no return. So it's hard to speaking this language in 2024 with just 6 years to go. So clearly we need a pretty significant and massive breakthrough of some kind. So what's the fierce urgency of now? We say that the crisis is twofold. It's a crisis of consciousness and it's a crisis of leadership. What do we mean by that? It's the famous Einstein quote, right? That the problem cannot be solved at the level at which it was created. So if we're looking at problems all around us, it's the level of consciousness with which we are living that is creating those problems. So to solve them, we need to change consciousness. So it's a crisis of consciousness. But equally, it's a crisis of leadership because our leaders have made decisions that have led us to the situations we are in today. We've just had poor leadership, and each one of us has to take some responsibility for that. If we had better leadership, we may not have been facing this crisis. So the current hypermasculine business governance and leadership model is clearly inadequate. Feminization is needed to restore balance, and women are critical to the economy, ecology, technology, and peace process. This is just statistics and research at this time. I am very much someone who is for gender reconciliation. So it's not about making any gender wrong or bad, but these are just what's needed for balance. It is time to end the battle of the sexes and become fully human. We urgently need leaders who are 2 things. They are conscious, meaning they show self-mastery and are in selfless service of a higher purpose. And 2, that they are integrated. By that, I mean they express healthy, competitive masculine and collaborative feminine values and behaviors. It's time for a new leadership model on a new power base that creates a world that works for all. We need to know and grow our Shakti. So what is Shakti? Shakti is a civilizational elixir from India to the world. And what is Shakti? It's the innate, infinite, intelligent power or energy of existence. It's regenerative and creative. Since everything arises from this source power, it's called the mother because it's the source force. It animates consciousness, it fuels evolution, and most of all, it drives all change. So Shakti in leadership is the power of presence, right? We talk about becoming more mindful, becoming more centered, becoming more present. And we talk about presence being the master key in Shakti leadership. And once you are present from a place of presence, presence brings us equanimity. but it's not a dull, dead, inert state. There is an accompanying power that comes when you are present. It makes you come fully alive. So this power provides the creative energy to innovate conscious outcomes, because ultimately that is what we need in leadership. We need creative energy to innovate conscious outcomes. I want us to think about a quick set of reflections. No? How do I do power? What is my power base? So you can see there is a column on the right and there's a column on the left. So let's go with what's on the right side of your screen. Typically, power is given a bad rep. It's considered a bad word. No one wants to think that they want power, because then that shows that they're some kind of a corrupt person. But the kind of power that is then being described is false power, okay? False power, which is a win-lose, which is about power over, trying to subjugate another person or people, right? It's the force of narrow self-interest. And typically you get this kind of power from privilege. So it's all about an external source. It's about becoming, the CEO or the head of an organization, the president of something, or, really entering some kind of a privilege that's given to you from the outside. Now, the thing about that is, whether it's political power or, financial power, your positional power, it is finite, right? Meaning it can be taken away from you. It ends one day. There is a shelf life to it. And most of all, what you create from this false sense of privilege and power ultimately fails, because it's not what evolution once created in the world. It's some ego-based push energy that has made something happen. So we've all seen movies such as Goodbye Lenin, where once upon a time here was one of the strongest men in the world, but then communism ended and the statue of Lenin is brought down and sent to the smelter. So just goes to show, right, that with time everything changes. And if you're in India, for example, we have a very similar unfortunate habit of, when politicians come into power, they'll create huge statues for themselves, like innumerable statues of themselves. It's such a power trip. And it is so sad, because, of course, they don't last in power forever. And then what do you do with all those statues, right? You've got to take them down and have them melted and so on. So we see this, unfortunately, all the time. You wake up in the morning, you open the newspaper, and the conversation is who's come into power and who's lost power. Whereas, let's look at the other side. There is this whole game called true power, right? Which is possible for us to play. This is a win-win kind of power. It's the power with, right? Where you can do power together with someone. No one has to lose for you to win. In fact, you discover that the only win is a win-win. Because if you actually make someone lose, eventually they're going to find a way to get revenge. And your win doesn't sit easy for you, right? So when you can do win-win and you have what we call power with, from there you also generate power to, power to create impact, positive change, right? So that is true power, the capacity to impact and make a difference. Now that is power, right? It's a force for greater good. And this power is what we tap into and what is called Shakti. So Shakti is an internal source. It is unlimited. Best of all, it cannot be taken away from you. And what you create from this Shakti eventually lasts, because it's something that moves through you. It is eternal and infinite. It belongs to the universe. And it's evolution itself that is being fueled by Shakti. So when you create something, you've simply become an instrument of evolution itself. So your creation will last. And we're talking about the mother in Sri Aurobindo. I love one of her sayings. She says, when the ego is driving us, we get so busy and we work so hard and we put in all this push energy. But she says it's such futile, hard work, because it's like beating water in a cup. You're beating it, you're beating it, you're beating it, and you think you're very busy and you're putting in a lot of energy, and you're getting exhausted, but then you stop beating the water in the cup. What happens? Nothing. The water goes right back to being still water in the cup. Nothing changes. But all that energy has been expended and lost in the process, right? So that's the kind of false power versus truly trying to find the innate power of the universe that drives each one of us as well. So one way to really make it very practical is to keep checking in on your power game at any given time. When you're having a conversation with somebody, right? Ask yourself, am I doing power over or am I doing power with? So think of a key relationship in your life. How do you exercise power in this relationship? It could be with your spouse, your partner. It could be with a parent. It could be with a child, a sibling, a colleague at work. It's a key relationship in your life. But have you ever thought about it in terms of power games, right? Is it mostly power over or power with? Are you playing a good power game and having good fun together for the better? Or is it some sort of a power play where it's a subtle manipulation? Okay. 2, think of a person who models power over leadership and someone who models power with leadership. So we have, unfortunately, too many examples of power over with all the leaders in the world we see today. But some, thankfully, we can remember and identify as those who are doing power with. I would put Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, the recent Prime Minister of New Zealand. She so much modeled power with, right? So what can you learn about your own relationship with power? When you leave today's session, I really want you to start looking for your power game and understanding how you exercise power. So the third reflection, how can you watch for power over dynamics and shift to power with dynamics from now on? So we're all human. We'll all tend to do the wrong power game, but it's okay. Can you stop and shift to do it right? Equally, notice how and when you may be giving away your power or unconsciously tend to lose it. We do this a lot. Sometimes we don't want conflict. Sometimes we don't want to upset somebody. Sometimes we don't want to be the bad person and the villain. We want to be invested in being seen as the nice person. So we tend to give our power away, right? So why do you think you are losing your power? And how can you prevent it? These are good reflections. Feel free to take a screenshot and make these reflections for yourself later on. You'll start beginning to unpack your own relationship with power. Moving on. To come into your full power, you need to become a whole person. This is a big statement from Shakti Leadership. So we talk about this icon that comes from the Indic philosophy, that a conscious leader is whole, and by that, we have the representation of an archetype called the Ardha Narishwar, which basically says when we come into our wholeness, when we come into our fullness, we are equal parts masculine and equal part feminine, right? Which means in this picture, you can see the right side is personified as the masculine side, which is pure consciousness. It's called Shiva, still witness energy. And on the left side is the creative energy that animates consciousness and creates this multiplicity, right? That's called Shakti. So Shiva and Shakti, divine masculine, divine feminine, they come together in each one of us. And when we are completely whole, we are as if this archetype, this representation here, the Ardha Narishwar. So we have to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of polarity? Why do things come in pairs? Why are we half masculine and half feminine? What is the reason for this polarity? Why does this polarity exist in creation? It's not a bug, it's a feature of the design. Think of a horseshoe magnet, right? So when you have a North Pole and a South Pole that gets created because of a magnet, now when I put a wire through the empty space between the two poles, I will unlock current, right? Whereas if I did not have the horseshoe magnet and I simply moved a wire in that space, nothing would happen. It would just be dull, inert space, right? So this goes to show that polarity generates a creative tension. And in the generation of the creative tension, potential energy can be unlocked to give us the fuel needed to run a system. And everything is a system, from mechanical to biological. Everything is a system and a subsystem of a greater system. So how does that entire system stay energized, right? Everything needs energy for it to function. So polarity is built into every level of the system. So that is why we have, at a basic level, the idea of yin and yang, masculine and feminine, active and receptive. So let's understand what is the masculine and feminine power that is available to us as leaders, and how can we be flexing between masculine and feminine power traits. This is polarity thinking work from Barry Johnson. It's absolutely brilliant. And once you learn how to do a polarity map with masculine and feminine energy to know how to get the best of both, you can use it to do a polarity map for any complementary interdependent pairs, because you need both at any given time, right? So how do you work a map? You begin by saying, what is it that you don't want? You don't want block your Shakti. What is it that you do want is to release your Shakti, right? So for that, you have to leverage your feminine side and your masculine side. You need to be able to get the best of both, right? And this line here is called, this horizontal line is like the line where the two quadrants above are your healthy behaviors and the two quadrants below are your unhealthy behaviors. So what are some healthy feminine qualities? So empathy, gentleness, inclusion, nurturing, openness, creativity, variety and flavor, trust, vulnerability, harmony. So this is not a complete list. I just asked a group such as you one day to say, give me some words that you associate with the healthy feminine, right? I didn't deny what their belief around it was, because that's their truth. That's how they see it. Now, at the same time, when you're looking at the feminine in this very positive way, there's a good chance you're tending to look at the masculine in a negative way. And certainly with thousands of years of patriarchy, right now we have over-leveraged the masculine, we have under-leveraged the feminine, and therefore the masculine has fallen below the line and is showing up in a very hyper, aggressive, and toxic way, right? So what does hypermasculinity look like? Aggressive, cruel, mechanical, arrogant, insensitive, violent, power-hungry, spiritually empty even, right? We can all recognize this in people we know, leaders we know, regardless of gender, because masculinity and femininity, yin and yang, Shiva and Shakti, all of this exists in each one of us, regardless of gender. Okay. We can identify people we know who fall in this quadrant right now. We have fallen in this quadrant very often ourselves, right? Let's not forget that the feminine isn't all positive all the time. Very often, if we only focus on being feminine and we neglect to balance it with the healthy masculine, we are doomed to fall below the line and become toxic feminine as well. So that can look like smothering, sentimental, needy, dependent, exploited, unfocused, irrational, weak, and manipulative. Please take a deep breath, because we've all been here, especially the women on the call. I imagine they know this, or those of us who really identify with the feminine and lead from the feminine, right? So let's not forget that there is the healthy masculine, all those wonderful qualities we get measured and rewarded for in leadership: clarity, assertiveness, focus, direction, order, discipline, structure, discernment, strength, convergence, getting to a job, getting done, right? and not talking about it and going all over the place. So how do you work with the polarity map? The whole idea is to learn to inhale and exhale between the top two quadrants, right? And if you don't do that, you're doomed to fall below the line and you will experience the worst of both. You either have the best of both or you have the worst of both. There is no other place. You can't say, I only want the feminine. Then it's like saying, I only like to inhale, I don't like to exhale, right? You're going to die. It doesn't work. So the thing with polarity is that we have no choice. We can't choose one polarity over another. Both are needed to keep the energy of a system going. So our job is to stay above the line and get the best of both. Otherwise, we fall below and have the worst of both. So how do you work a polarity map? Identify an early warning sign. Suppose you have been in your healthy feminine, you've neglected the healthy masculine. Typically, you will fall below the line and you will start experiencing one of these feelings or behaviors. Ask yourself which one is yours. Maybe it's another word that is not here. Go ahead and find it. You know, it's a kind of habit. We each have a bad habit when we become negatively feminine or masculine. We have a typical go-to place. And when I did the work, I identified that my go-to place is needy, you know. And I started noticing over the years as I started falling into my unhealthy feminine, when I fell into my unhealthy feminine, I started becoming needy. So now I identified, neediness is my early warning. The minute that feeling arises in me, what do I have to do? I've got to enter pause, like hit the pause button, and then take an action step that takes me across the board and returns me to healthy masculine. So it's literally like hot and cold running water. If it's too hot, add some cold water, right? If it's too cold, add some hot water. So first, one thing at a time. Let's ask ourselves, what action step can I take that is a good quality I have? That is one of my superpowers. That is an easy go-to for me, an easy reach for me when I fall below the line into unhealthy feminine. In my case, when I become needy, I have now learned, because I've identified my healthy masculine that's good is self-care. It's not a word here, but I discovered I'm very capable of drawing my boundaries and doing self-care. And it's the perfect description of putting on your oxygen mask first before taking care of others. So if I'm feeling needy, it's the great antidote to neediness, because instead of waiting for someone else to meet my needs, I do the self-care and meet my needs myself. I'm capable of that. So why am I waiting for somebody else to come rescue me, right? So that's my action step. The minute I do self-care, guess what? I'm above the line because I'm in my healthy masculine. So please do the work for yourselves, okay? Ask what happens when you fall below the line. Suppose you're just doing too much of your healthy masculine, you forget to take your healthy feminine along. At some point, that will turn toxic. You will fall below the line and you'll start exhibiting one of these lower quadrant behaviors. What is yours? In my case, I identified it as judgmental. Again, it's not a word that's here. Find your word. I noticed that I feel very superior. I feel I am so smart. I can identify everybody else's weaknesses. But now I've discovered that's my toxic masculine judgmental behavior. It's like an inner aggression I have, right, towards someone. So now early warning, insert pause. The minute I feel being judgmental, insert pause, take an action step, go over across the board, move into the healthy feminine through a certain behavior you are good at, that is feminine. So in my case, it is compassion. Again, not a word that you find here. Find your word. Compassion is something I have spent years practicing. I'm good at it, and it's the best antidote to judgment. So instead of judging someone for their weakness, I can actually find in myself the capacity to feel compassion for them. Forgive them for they know not what they do. Maybe they don't know any better. Maybe they simply don't have the capacity, right? You can't expect blood from a rock. So why are you expecting them to be a particular way? Maybe it's not in their swabhav, it's not in their nature, right? So compassion is a great antidote to judgment, and it's a wonderful, healthy, feminine quality. So there you go. I hope you can identify your early warnings, your action steps, your early warnings, your action steps. So in my case, as long as I can inhale and exhale from a place of presence between care for self and compassion for others, care for self and compassion for others, keeping my boundaries as I'm able to take care of others, I'm in this very beautiful state of flow from a place of presence. The minute I lose either my healthy feminine or my healthy masculine, I fall below the line and I have the worst of both. I start feeling needy on one hand, even as I'm judgmental about others, right? And that inner toxic emotion is so terrible. It's so uncomfortable. I don't like living like that. I don't like having those kinds of feelings swishing around, swashing around in me, right? So now I know what to do. I know how to get out of it. So please take a screenshot and do your work later on. We don't have time for it today. I'm happy to take questions at the end of this talk. Moving on. Where are we going with this? The goal in Shakti leadership is what Carl Jung invites us to, the inner wedding, the dance of love and power, right? Where inside us, our heartful man is married to our mindful woman, regardless of the gender we identify with or our sexuality. So if we identify as masculine, the hero, we have to learn to say yes. We have to open boundaries up to vulnerability and find love. Whereas if we identified with the feminine or the female, we have to learn to say no. We have to create healthy boundaries to gain security and reclaim the power we lose in the patriarchy, right? So you can see that each one journeys to the same state of wholeness, but they come to it in complementary opposite ways, depending on how they identify and which aspect of themselves they have developed, masculine or feminine. They have to make themselves whole by completing themselves from within, right? So it's called psychological wholeness. Jung calls it psychological wholeness, and I call it the holy family reunion. We love having family reunions, but first we have to gather the holy family within ourselves first. So what does that mean? That means individuating. So the individuated self is when you have come out of your being part of the psychology of your parent or your community, and you are now your own sovereign being who has their own mind and their own thoughts, because that's what they have become aware of and chosen, right? So to become an individuated self, you have to become your own parent and you have to become your own child. And this is the work from Eric Berne's transactional analysis, right? Be an aware adult, have access to your healthy parent when needed, have access to your healthy child when needed. And now this is one level of psychological wholeness. There's another level of psychological wholeness, which is what Jung calls the masterpiece. The apprentice piece was the parent-child ego-shadow integration. The masterpiece is the anima-animus integration. So, if you're a man, you have to find your inner woman. If you're a woman, you have to find your inner man, right? So in Shakti leadership, we say you have to become the wise fool of tough love. This is the archetype of a psychologically whole leader, right? Wise is they have access to the inner parent. Fool, access to the inner child. In the tarot, fool is considered a very necessary energy and quality that we all need. It's the inner child that knows how to have a sense of wonder, how to be foolish, childlike, innocent. So there's a deep wisdom to the fool archetype. As we know among the Sufi tradition, right? It's all about being foolish and lightening up and, talking in gibberish, right? So the wise fool is having the parent-child integrated. of tough love. Tough is the masculine in us, knows how to draw boundaries in a healthy way. And love is the feminine in us that knows how to include as we, to gather as we go and grow. So if you remember nothing from today's talk, please take this one thing away. Strive to become the wise fool of tough love, because now from there, you are in your whole power. And you have at least the 4 leadership styles or psychological capacities needed to respond to any life situation, right? So if you're going through something and your current strategy isn't working, ask yourself, what do I need to dial up? What do I need to dial down? Do I need to be more wise in this moment? Do I need to be more childlike and foolish in this moment? Play, just lighten up and have fun. Do I need to be more tough and assert myself? Or do I need to be more love and compassionate in this moment? Between these 4 things, you will have a breakthrough, because it's called the 4-fold self. There is no 5th at this level of completion, right? One of these will give us the breakthrough if we are stuck in any of the other. The journey through the 5 elements of Shakti leadership, I'm coming to a close of the presentation. Here is the model, the framework. It's about first cultivating presence. From a place of presence, you come into your true power, your Shakti. It's innate to you. From here, you become psychologically whole. You become the wise fool of tough love. Then you have to cultivate flexibility, which is the capacity to situationally flex between the 4 styles to a situation as needed, right? So to have a capacity for agility and flexibility. And the 5th element is congruence, which is about knowing who you are, knowing your purpose, and then living your life on purpose, right? Knowing that nature that you have, your swabhav, and then knowing that your dharma is the swadharma of living the swabhav that you have, expressing that in its fullness, right? That is what it means to be congruent. And we put a circle around this to represent the hero's journey, the heroic journey, that each of these 5 elements is a power base. Each of them will have to be earned. You'll have to go on a journey to claim it, to be able to express it and hold it. So it'll demand the courageous, heroic self in you. This is the work of Joseph Campbell and Maureen Murdoch. In closing, exercise power mindfully. It's about win-win power with, not win-lose power over. It's about masculine and feminine power, not masculine or feminine power. It's time to restore gender relations. They are in a state of deep disrepair. As the patriarchy comes to an end, we find that many women are on fire, they're coming alive, they're finding their voice, they're believing their time has come. And we're finding many men who are therefore a little lost or confused because it's a sense of roles changing, not knowing what that identity is anymore that they need to be growing into. So it's a time to be deeply compassionate all around, not really holding on to anger beyond a point, shame, blame, guilt, none of that. We need to be able to process and move on from that, own it, accept it, but move on from it. It's about becoming the whole man, whole woman, whole person, whole leader. And let's rise in love together, not fall in love where we make ourselves less in some way. Our Shakti mission is to create 100,000 by 2030, that is Shakti leaders, building a global network of Shakti stewards who collaborate to create peace, prosperity, and beauty through the exchange of multiple forms of capital. So we have many ways you can join the movement. You can step in to transform yourself, step up to find the leadership you need to have, and step out to create the game-changing projects to impact the world. We do it through 9-month fellowship program certified with University of San Diego and WIN with Skolkovo in Moscow. It's a 6-month program. We have an 18-hour video course. But today I want to talk about a 12-week group self-study course. This is the simplest, easiest way to get certified. Just come together and create a group and then, mastermind it for yourselves and get certified. There are 12 modules and you can do it as quickly as in 12 weeks. So you can write to us at programmanager@shaktileadership.com, and we're happy to be providing a pretty significant discount on it for today. On the website, it costs $297 per person, but if you register before the 5th of April, you will have it at $199 US dollars per person. Please write to us at programmanager@shaktileadership.com. Q&A and call outs and discussion.
Wow. Something that I love about everything that you do, Nilima, is that so clear and so structured. And I think that you are a master combining that feminine and masculine energies, that Shakti and Shiva energies in so beautiful, harmonic way. I really like it. I really love it. And being with you more than 10 days in India, I really witnessed that. So thank you so much for that. I love the goal of 100,000. At the World Happiness Foundation, we want to get to 10 billion happy people by 2050. That means that if we get to 2030 with those 100,000, we can definitely achieve that. So we are going to be supporting all this Shakti movement for sure for the next years to come. And I see many people here like Paul, like Edith, Paul, Paula, Rosario, that I'm sure I'm going to be jumping into this because the Shakti is really, really powerful here. So thank you for that. I have maybe we can jump into questions. One from Div. Here is, when you're in a toxic work environment, how do we channel the energy, Shakti, to bring conscious leadership across the company?
So first of all, if you're truly in a large organization and you don't have the sphere of influence needed, you must think about whether you need to stay in a toxic environment, right? Because if you don't have a sphere of influence where you can make impact and make change. So we often say to people, change the company or change the company. Okay? Do not stay around in the unacceptable systems and energy field, because eventually it'll burn you out and harm you in some way. So find a place where you can have influence, where you have agency. And then here is the model. You begin with cultivating presence yourself. So you say outer change through inner change. And you cannot change anyone or anything until you haven't done the work yourself, right? So you begin with finding those capacities in yourself, becoming present yourself, holding yourself accountable to your power game, right? Having the authenticity. Leaders can fall into self-deception like that. That is human nature. We can see everything that's wrong outside, but we can't see it inside, or we have a blind spot, and it's called self-deception. So to be very, very kindly ruthless with yourself, that's the level of authenticity and sincerity. The mother calls it sincerity. That's the first of the mother's 12 qualities in her symbol. Sincerity, humility, gratitude. Once you do that work, you will start finding a kind of confidence that comes from standing in your own truth, in your own goodness. No one can take that from you. And from there, speak your truth. Own it. You owe it to yourself to own your truth. Compassionately, kindly, but own it. And then make change in your sphere of influence. And what's beyond your sphere of influence, let it go. Don't bother. Yeah.
Before we go to the next question, I would like to make a comment and a question as well. If we see who is in this room now, And that's how I felt as well in India. Is basically 98% are women. And at the same time, the most conscious beings on the planet are women as well. So I was wondering, and this is linked as well to the question from Cindy, how can we, and what is your recommendation to get more men aware that this is important for all? And if we don't get 50% of the population of the planet, which is male population, into this strategy, we are not going to balance, and we are
Yeah,
not.
so that's,
So what do you recommend?
I have a very deep answer from depth psychology, since I love Carl Jung and I've studied alchemy, those kinds of concepts from Tantra and so on, that for something like a compound to turn from its base compound into gold, you first need to separate the elements that constitute the base compound. So masculine and feminine first need to be separated out. Male and female first need to be separated out from the old patriarchal dynamic in which we are bonded in a codependent way, right? And it has wounded both men and women and all non-binaries, right? So first thing first is to separate, and each one has to purify themselves, raise their consciousness to along their lines, along their dharma. A female's dharma is her way, male dharma is their way, non-binary is their way. Each one has to go on their path to self-purification and raising of consciousness to the next version of themselves, the next higher, better version of themselves. Each one has to become psychologically whole from within first. Then we can bring them back together and hopefully as we reconstitute the new versions, now you get gold, right? But there is no alchemy without separation. So what I'm seeing today around the world, when I see relationships in states of deep disrepair, I see one of the things I say is most marriages are not surviving the awakened woman. No? What if it's part of the journey? That as women are rising, it's as if men are falling. But what if men have to go down into the depths of their own shadows? And that's where they're going to find the light, right? Because everything ultimately is made of light. And, they have to bring their shadow to light. And that is a work maybe they have to do on their own. And women can't do it for them. And as long as women are standing with them, maybe we are stopping men from going on their personal individual journeys. So I don't know in what time it's going to happen, but it looks like the women are rising anyway. It's like they've been suppressed for so long in the patriarchy. They are just taking off like rockets. Men are going in another direction, but maybe that too is part of the process. And I would love for men to gather in men's circles. I would love for more men like you, Louis, who represent the Ardhanarishwar, who have found your psychological wholeness. You're such a beautiful example yourself. And men like you can lead others and show others, sit in circles of men and model it for others compassionately, right? Women need to sit in circles of women and model it for each other too, in a way that, forgives the patriarchy and the masculinity, not by accepting the unacceptable. They still have to do and, find the justice, work for it, but eventually, as you say, you can't have half the population rising and leave the other half behind, because as we say, the only win is a win-win. None of us are going to be okay until all of us are going to be okay. But I think each gender needs to, but all genders need to sit with their own identities and find their own psychological wholeness first and help others. We also say, Juanita Robertson, one of our associates, that the responsibility lies with the ones more healed. So among the men, those who are more healed and more whole, please do the work of helping others. And of course, one day when we feel women are those women who are sufficiently whole, who are going to be able to meet men not with judgment or anger, rage. There's a lot of that among women today, understandably, right? Those women who've made their journeys to their level of forgiveness and acceptance of society and the past and come into their own peace, they can show up as midwives, helpers for other genders
What a
without
beautiful answer.
making them dependent, right?
Yes. What a beautiful answer. I wonder if somebody was to raise the hand and be on camera as well. In the meantime, looking at the 5 elements of the Shakti leadership, and the first one being presence, I was wondering if you have a first step to be present.
Yes.
If we have to start somewhere, what is the first step?
So we actually have a 5-minute and a 10-minute presence practice that's available for free on our website. Pavni, maybe you can just share a link on the presence practice page from Shakti Leadership in the free resources section. We follow the work of the Enneagram, the wisdom of the Enneagram, which says that there are typically 3 places we rush to when we lose presence. We either rush into our gut and we become defensive, and like we have in this fight, flight, survival, something to defend, right? Or we rush into our heart, emotional outer heart, and we become pleasers. We want people to love us and validate us. So we have something to promote. Or we rush into our head and we get into anxiety about, what can go wrong in the future. Or then we beat ourselves up with the inner critic with shame and guilt from the past, right? So when you go to one of these 3 places, you have something to defend, something to promote, and something to fear. One return to presence is to simply step back from those 3 centers, back into your spine. The polyvagal theory is very popular these days. Know how to breathe up and down your spine in this very neutral way, that axis mundi that connects heaven and earth. And you say, I have nothing to defend, and I have nothing to promote, and I have nothing to fear. And the only reality of this moment is that I am here now, right? And then we make very powerful affirmations such as, all I need is within me. All I need comes to me. All I need flows through me. Because I am enough. I have enough. And there is enough for all. So these are powerfully chosen, curated statements, antidotes to typical ways in which we lose presence, because we fall into poverty consciousness, we fall into envy of some kind, we fall into victim consciousness. So the minute you say, I am enough, I have enough, there is enough. All I need is within me. All I need comes to me, right? All these are super fast, effective ways of returning to presence.
You don't only have answers, but actually you have wise answers. This is amazing. And actually see, Pawani, that you are putting these links to YouTube with these practices. This is so beautiful. We'll make sure that we incorporate this as part of the program as well that we are running. So we are just a minute away from closing. And I was wondering if there is a last question that we can go through. I have so many, but I want to give space for somebody else. And I highly recommend that maybe as a group, we join this 12 weeks module, because this is something that we are going to be incorporating as well as part of the Chief Wellbeing Officer program ongoing. Is the recommendation to go through Shakti Leadership, because something that we find is that when we want to transform environments, unless we transform ourselves and we are aligned, and then we help leaders to transform themselves, few things are going to change around us. So we can have an amazing strategy, but Peter Drucker already said, culture eats a strategy for breakfast. But the reality is that leadership and incongruent leadership, it's culture and strategy for breakfast. So this is the beginning of so many things, and I think this is really the beginning of fundamental change in the world and at the corporate level as well. I see Isabella here, and I don't know if maybe this could be one last reflection about basically is, as we have both energies, feminine and masculine, instead of talking about women and men, could we talk about feminine and masculine energy to avoid gender issues for the sake of human unity? What do you think, Nilima?
You think avoid gender issues?
Yeah, in this case is the polarity between feminine, masculine,
Yes.
women and men. I mean,
Yes.
is there synonymous there?
No,
or they are
no, they're not. Actually, masculine, feminine are in every gender, regardless of, they are in everybody. So yes, if you identify as female, then you're probably leading more with your feminine side. If you identify as male, you're probably living more from your masculine side. But all of us, regardless of gender, have to achieve psychological wholeness between the masculine and feminine capacities in us. That's what Jung calls psychological wholeness, right? And that's in the Indic system, the Ardha Narishwar, the half male, half female God. To come into our full power as the divine that we are capable of being, we will be equal parts masculine and feminine in our own unique combination. So actually, it's about diversity of thought, that we need to at least have two ways of looking at the world to solve for the problems of our time. So to not deny the difference, there is a purpose for the polarity, that you can't say, I only like to inhale, I only like the masculine, I don't like to exhale, I don't like the feminine, or vice versa, right? You can't choose one or the other. You need both. So very often people don't want to talk about the difference and say, it's not even an issue. Actually, we are all one. But then you're missing the point. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? You need the difference. The diversity is built into the system, and it has a purpose and a reason, right?
Beautiful. And Isabella likes the answer. So great to see you, Isabella, and Rosanna as well. Okay, well, here we are. It was a whole hour of wisdom. Thank you so much, Nilima. Thank you so much, Pawani, for managing, and you have all our love and all our support in this time. And thank you, everybody, for joining. We'll keep doing these sessions on an ongoing basis as part of the Chief Wellbeing Officer program. You're very welcome to join the program as well if you want to bring well-being and happiness to as many places as possible in a structured and strategic way with a Shakti leadership. So thank you very much for everybody for joining, and see you very soon. Thank you so much, Nilima.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Such a lovely group of people. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful, powerful.
Thank you.